Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Odin's Movie Blog. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope you're doing well, and today we'll be talking about some Star Wars news. It's been a long time, I feel, since I've done some official Star Wars news for the channel, and this time we've got ourselves a real doozy. This is stuff that's being covered on all the major channels right now, but dear Lord, if we didn't know that Kathleen Kennedy was incompetent as a creative mind before Disney's sequel Star Wars came out, we now know more than ever before because of the recent interview that she gave. And oh my goodness gracious, how in the hell is this woman still in charge? I know, River, I feel the same way. How in the hell is this woman still in charge, somehow, some way, of the Star Wars universe? It just doesn't make any sense at this point. She is now, by this statement, made it very clear that she has no idea what Star Wars is. She has no idea how to run this universe, and it's not just clear based on what she says here, it's also, of course, clear based on what we're getting in the actual movies themselves. So this is coming, of course, from our boys over at Bound into Comics, from John F. Trent himself, and as you can tell from the title, Kathleen Kennedy on difficulty of making Star Wars sequel films. She claims there's no source material. We don't have comic books. There is no source material. So this woman who was put in charge of the Star Wars universe, who was handpicked, we are believed to have been handpicked by George Lucas himself, someone that was right by his side during the process of making these movies, that she somehow was going to be the creative mind that was going to bring the Lucasfilm forward and the Star Wars universe forward, had no idea about the EU? Is she now admitting that she had no idea that literally a plethora of novels and comics have been made? We had no source material, she says. Also, this blatantly contradicts what Bob Iger recently revealed in his interview, or rather with his book. What was revealed in his book, that George Lucas sold him stories that he had ready. George Lucas, remember, had an entire trilogy ready post Return of the Jedi. And Bob Iger said, hey, let me hear what you have to say. Oh, I can't promise anything, but hey, why don't we buy those off your hands for you? You know, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Oh, yeah, we're not going to use those because, you know, we told you that there were no promises. Sorry, George. Very, very sorry. So now you have two heads, one head of Disney, one head of Lucasfilm, saying very different things. On the one hand, Bob Iger admits to having bought these scripts off of George Lucas, meaning they had scripts, meaning, guess what? You have source material to move forward. Oh, it was difficult to make these movies because we had nothing to go on. Yeah, not including George Lucas's material that you bought from him. I would assume that Bob Iger would have had you in those meetings, seeing that George Lucas was present and you were the new head of Lucasfilm. I wonder, things don't quite sound right here. And it goes on and on and on. So Kennedy was asked during a Rolling Stone interview. So this is not just from some, bumpkin random article. This is from Rolling Stone, which, despite what I have to say about Rolling Stone as an overall publication, how far it's fallen from its glory days, it's still a major publication nonetheless. So she responded to this. She says, every one of these movies is a particularly hard nut to crack. There's no source material. We don't have comic books. We don't have 800-page novels. We don't have anything other than passionate storytellers who get together and talk about what the next iteration might be. Yeah. You didn't have the Thrawn trilogy. You're right. You didn't have the Thrawn trilogy since the night. No. What's the Thrawn? Who's a Thrawn? What's a Thrawn? That's what Kathleen Kennedy's probably saying, because I honestly question, does she have any idea about... I feel like I know more about Star Wars than she does, and I don't consider myself to be one of the biggest Star Wars fans. What I mean by that is I'm no RK Outpost. I don't know every single thing about the EU like he does. I'm no Lethal Lightning who knows all the stuff about the EU that I don't know. I've dipped my toe into the EU. I've read the Thrawn trilogy. I've read the Thrawn duology. I've read Outbound Flight. I've read and listened to, more accurately, I've listened to the audiobooks, which again is basically reading nowadays, but from an ADD mind, it's better for me to listen to it. That's a side. As you can tell, I have ADD. Anyway, I don't have nearly as much knowledge as them, but I'm pretty sure by the very fact that I at least am aware of the fact that there were other stories out there that were not directly created by George Lucas, but created by other very talented writers and storytellers that were not utilized at all in the process of making the sequel trilogy. Man, oh man. Either she's completely incompetent, which it really seems to indicate she is at this point, or she wasn't told by Bob Iger, oh, we have these scripts, etc. Either way, it doesn't look good for her because either way, she has to be ignorant of the fact that there was an EU. Now, she might try and, step back from that saying, what I mean was that we saw the EU, but we wanted to go in a new direction because we wanted to make Star Wars for a new generation. How many times have we heard that expression before? This is for a new generation. This is Terminator for a new generation. Goes woke, goes broke. Oh, this is Charlie's Angels for a new generation. Goes woke, goes broke. Oh, this is Star Wars for a new generation. Now, the unfortunate side to that, of why it's not going broke in the same way that these other franchises have, with actual gigantic losses, unless, of course, you count Solo Star Wars Story, which lost close to $200 million, is the fact that there is such a large fan base and such a diverse fan base that even though we could argue that a large chunk of that fan base has been just completely distraught and has just been completely pissed off with every single thing that Lucasfilm's doing, and I think rightly so. I think all of us that are being critical of Lucasfilm have every right to be. There are still a lot of people out there that are either fine with what's going on, are oblivious to what's going on, or are just normie fans that say, oh, lightsabers, battles in space, CGI, 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 I'm going to go to it no matter what. They didn't show up for Star Wars, a Solo a Star Wars story, but they probably will still show up for Rise of Skywalker, which is why I don't think the film is going to flop in the traditional sense. But the fact that we're even talking about the film barely making $1 billion at this point in time, which again, we could see happen one way or the other. The fact that it's tracking below The Last Jedi, and The Last Jedi made $1.3 billion, seems to indicate that it very well could happen that the film either just reaches $1 billion or maybe just misses the $1 billion mark. It'll be interesting to see. Won't be able to really tell until we get some actual raw data from those Thursdays and, of course, the opening and the second weekend as well. But this does indeed seem to, again, contradict, and I'm glad. I'm just looking at this right now. Bounty on the Comics, again, John F. Trent is a smart dude, and this is the reason why I love reading his articles, because he always shows and connects the dots saying, this is what's being said, but don't forget about this. He points this out. This is a lie. Thank you very much. This is a lie. There is no other way to describe it. It is a lie. Disney CEO Bob Iger admitted they received outlines from George Lucas about what the sequel trilogy would look like in his recent book. Thank you. Again, I didn't even read this article beforehand, but thank you for talking about that very point. Here's the quote from Iger himself. At some point in the process, George told me that he had completed outlines for 3 new movies. He agreed to send us 3 copies of the outlines, one for me, one for Alan Braverman, and one for Alan Horn, who'd just been hired to run our studio. Alan Horn and I read George's outlines and decided we needed to buy them, though we made clear in the purchase agreement that we would not be contractually obligated to adhere to the plot lines he laid out. Basically, he brought and pulled and teased George Lucas along so that he would feel comfortable enough to give up his babies, give up his scripts of his new movies, so that way they could buy it and basically say, yeah, now you can't talk about it because we own these now. Haha. That's basically what Bob Iger did to them. So we already know by this very fact that Kathleen Kennedy's lying on 2 fronts. One, she's lying because we know they had the scripts because Bob Iger just released it. He's the president of Disney, so we know that she would have had access to that as the president of Lucasfilm. If you're going to tell me, oh, she didn't know because of the way the corporate structure is, no, I'm sorry. You're telling me that the head of creative, the head of Lucasfilm herself, is not going to have access to the fact that George Lucas had 3 other things? You're telling me that the hand-picked successor of George Lucas is not going to know that George was working on these already and had these in the pipeline? I'm sorry. That's stupid. That's ignorant. And that's complete BS, for lack of a better expression. But not only is it a lie there, it is also a lie by the very fact that there are EU novels. There are a plethora of EU novels written by a wide variety, a diverse variety of people, and that these stories span far and wide from the end of Return of the Jedi to long past to long before. There are so many stories, in fact, that it's sad that this is what we've gotten. We've gotten one of the worst. We are in one of the worst Star Wars universes ever created because of the fact that we have so many rich stories. It's really sad when you really think about it. But Kennedy is lying through her teeth, not just because of Bob Iger, because also we know the fact that they have all these different things. Here's the other thing, and this is why I love John F. Trent. John F. Trent, I love you, man. He goes on. Not only did Disney have Lucas's outlines, but they also had access to a plethora. He used my word. Oh my gosh, John F. Trent, I love you. I use that word all the time. Dude, Three Amigos, best movie ever. A plethora of piñatas. But you're right. She also had an access to a plethora of novels, video games, and comic books about Star Wars. They had source material. They had comic books, and they had lengthy novels. I know, River. It's ticking me off too, River. I know. But you need to calm down right now. I feel the same way. Seriously. You're upsetting my dog, Kathleen Kennedy, with your lies and deceit. Dark Horse Comics began publishing Star Wars comics in 1991. Not anything new. With Dark Empire, Star Wars Tales of the Jedi, Empire's Hand, Crimson Empire, Jedi Academy, Leviathan, Dark Forces, Jedi Knight, Mara Jade by the Emperor's Hand, and more. Before Dark Horse Comics began publishing the Star Wars comics, they were published by Marvel Comics. The original Marvel Star Wars series was first published in 1977 and ran through 1986, 107 total issues. But we have no source material. 107 issues of a comic. We have no source material. We don't have comics. We don't have novels. Well, there are your comics. She's once again proven to be a complete liar. There were 107 total issues. Interestingly enough, Star Wars issue number 49, published in April 1981 and was published as The Last Jedi. Ryan Stolman fan fiction story, perhaps? Shout out to you, Laura. There are also plenty of Star Wars novels. Yeah, tell me about it. Maybe the most famous is the Thrawn trilogy, written by Timothy Zahn, including Heirs of the Empire, Dark Force Rising, and The Last Command. If you've never read the Thrawn trilogy, I recommend it. If you are like me and are sick and tired of the sequel trilogy, go ahead and get those audiobooks, because Mark Thompson, who does the voice acting for all of the roles in those books, is phenomenal. He captures the essence of the characters that you know and gives new life to characters that you are just being introduced to for the first time. They are wonderful novels. Disney also introduced Thrawn into their Star Wars canon and Star Wars Rebels. That's right, they literally took a character from a novel and stuck him in a canon TV show. So now, John F. Trent, you're doing it, man. He is pointing all the holes in the argument and just showing how stupid or how ignorant she has to be. We had no novels. We had no comics. We had no source material. And yet, you take a character that was introduced in a Star Wars novel and you brought it into a TV series, meaning that you had knowledge of it, meaning, oh, guess what? You had source material. What's your response there, Kathleen Kennedy? All the Kathleen Kennedy defenders out there, all the Lucasfilm, all the paid shills out there, what's your response to this? Please. Because John F. Trent is laying the smack down. He is laying the smacketh down on Kathleen Kennedy and her lies. I would love to see all the people that are obsessed with defending every single thing that woman does try and respond to this. They also introduced a Hammerhead-class cruiser ship in Rogue One. The ship was first introduced into Star Wars lore in the 2003 video game Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, but we had nothing. We had no games. We didn't have comics. We didn't have novels. We had nothing. We were running by the skin of our teeth. However, there's also the Jedi Academy trilogy by Kevin J. Anderson, all the Jedi Apprentice books, the Last of the Jedi books by Jude Watson, the Rebel Force books by Alex Wheeler, and Galaxy of Fear by John Whitman. There are literally dozens, if not hundreds, of Star Wars novels that Disney could have pulled from. They also had the prequel and sequel trilogies to look to as well. In fact, one could argue that The Force Awakens is a beat-for-beat remake of the original Star Wars movie. And they have a little video in here showing you that it is the same movie. But we didn't know. We had no source material. Despite its obvious lie, Kennedy continued to detail the process Lucasfilm went about to create the sequel trilogy. We go through a really normal development process that everyone else does. You start by talking to filmmakers who you think exhibit the sensibilities that you're looking for. I wonder what those sensibilities are, Kathleen Kennedy. I wonder what they are. She argues this is a very small list. And I would argue that the list is very small. People who really do have the sensibilities about these kinds of movies, and then the experience and the ability to handle how enormous a job these movies are. So we try to be as thoughtful and as possible as we possibly can about making those choices. And yet, we know that you say it's a small list, you say that you try and be careful and thoughtful, and yet you fire 3 people from movies. 2 of which you fired after 80% of the movie was already shot through, when the case was with the Solo Star Wars story with Lord of Miller. So to me, she's just exposing not only that she's an idiot, not only that she's ignorant, not only that she's a liar, but also that, why are you the president of Lucasfilm? Seriously. This, I think, is proof positive. If anyone else ever had doubts, if you were still on the fence with this, if this interview does not show you why we have been harping against Kathleen Kennedy for so long, oh, you just hate her because she's a strong woman in charge. I could care less about her gender. Most of us could care less about the gender of any individual person. All we care about is, what are you going to deliver? Whether you're a man or a woman, are you going to deliver on Star Wars or not? She has not. And now she's lying about it. Now she's trying to paint her own history. She's trying to rewrite her own history, because we know that she's probably about to ride off into the sunset. 2021 is likely going to be the end of her, because Bob Iger is also heading out too. But oh my goodness gracious, this is ridiculous. He goes on, I don't buy this argument either. The Marvel Cinematic Universe films are arguably just as big as Star Wars films, and they are finding new talent all the time. You're right. All the time. And what's sad is that the people that you have chosen haven't really been all that impressive. When you got the likes of people like Denis Villeneuve out there, who has done amazing work with big budget films, when you have people like Jon Favreau, who now you have on doing your Mandalorian series, which, by the way, is the only good thing you're really doing in Star Wars right now at this point in time. And even then, there's still criticism to be made. If this was a Star Wars that we were getting back in 2015, I think all of us would be like, oh my gosh, Star Wars is back. But since we've seen all the crap that we've gotten, and this is what we're getting, and we're like, oh, there's so many good things here, but oh my Lord, they still have a long way to go. Kathleen Kennedy, everybody. Liar in chief. Head of Lucasfilm Lies, head of the Fib department, being caught in a lie by John F. Trent over at Bounding Into Comics. Good work, good sir. And in all honesty, I have no idea what the future of Star Wars is going to look like, because if she is in charge, if she is fully still in charge, which I honestly believe she still is, and if she's going to have a hand in picking her successor, and if that person is anything like her, where they're that ignorant and that much of a liar, will they say, oh, where we go from here, we don't know because we don't have any stories. We're not like the MCU. We don't have all these years of comics and video games and all this other stuff, even though we do. Dear Lord, the future of Star Wars does not look very good. We have Jedi Fallen Order. Great video game. I haven't played myself yet, but the video game footage for it looks fantastic, and everyone that I know that's playing it is loving it. We have Mandalorian, which so far has been pretty solid. New episode coming out tomorrow. But man, oh man, Kathleen Kennedy, caught in your lies, and ba-da-ba-ba-ba, I'm loving it. Anyway, what are your thoughts about this stuff? Do you think that Kathleen Kennedy is a liar, incompetent, or both? I think she's honestly both, because she's blatantly lying here, and if she isn't lying here, then she is being completely ignorant, but we know that it can't be the case. We know that, rather, she is ignorant because of what she's done with Star Wars, but we also know that she has to have known about it because she's been involved with Lucas for a long time. The reason why she was the hand-picked successor to George Lucas is because they knew each other, so she would have known, supposedly would have known a lot about what he was planning. At the very least, would have known about his scripts. I'm very glad that he pointed that out. Not only do you have all the novels and all the EU stuff that you decided to make. Also, by the way, if you had no idea, then why did one of the first things that you did with your story group have them make all of the EU non-canon, except for a couple of things? You would have to know about non-canon things in order to make them non-canon, right? But I digress. Let me know your thoughts about that and all the things we talked about in the comment section below. If you like this video, smash that like button to give Mr. God helps a lot. You're all amazing and beautiful people. Also, go subscribe to RK Outpost and Lethal Lightning if you want some really great EU content. They do a lot of other content too, but if you want to have access to a lot of talk about the extended universe of Star Wars, some book recommendations, some character recommendations, they are definitely two of the best channels out there to go to, and they are two people that not just are part of the Geeks and Gamers team like I am, but are just awesome, cool bros in the process. Anyway, thanks for watching. Have a wonderful day. And as always, God bless.